Okay, I want to continue with chapter 1 of The Future of an Illusion. In the previous lecture, I covered Freud's main point in the chapter is that civilization is at war and it's surrounded by two enemies. On the one hand, nature, which threatens us with storms and hurricanes, so we have to control it. But also, it threatens us with disease because think of the coronavirus. That comes from nature. Viruses, bacteria, these things come from nature. So, and you can see with the what's going on right now with the coronavirus, what's happening from a Freudian standpoint, what's happening, if you think in terms of future of illusion, is a civilization is fighting nature. And at this point, we're fighting the virus, the coronavirus. So this brings into civilization has to bring all its resources to fight nature. We're spending billions of dollars, millions of dollars on. They're trying to come up with a vaccine or some type of defense against the coronavirus. So there's a war going on. From a Freudian standpoint, what's going on? Civilization is fighting nature, when there's hurricanes come and storms, this is all nature and civilization has to fight it. That's what civilization is fighting all the time. And Freud is saying not only is civilization at war with nature, but it's also at war with the individual human beings that compose it. Because of Freud's, in the first chapter, Freud says the masses of people are lazy and ignorant. By ignorant, he means when it comes to emotion versus reason, emotion usually wins out. And so civilization is dealing with kind of bad material, corrupt bad material. That's why it needs to control the masses of people. And it's also dealing with people who Freud says have hostile impulses. And this leads to civilization having to defend itself. And here's what he says on page 9 of the first chapter. Actually, let me go back to page 7. He says, the regulations of civilization are aimed not only at effecting a certain distribution of wealth, but at maintaining that distribution. Indeed, they have to protect everything that contributes to the conquest of nature and the production of wealth against men's hostile impulses. So the hostile impulses are part of our instinctual nature. So civilization has to defend itself against us. And then Freud says, this page 7, human creations are easily destroyed, and science and technology, which have built them up, can also be used for their annihilation. Think of the wars that we create for ourselves. Think of Hiroshima, World War II. Human creations are easily destroyed. All it takes is dropping some bombs on a city and you'll destroy everything. The wars that we think you could fly airplanes into buildings and knock them down. Think of 9/11. Human creations are easily destroyed, and science and technology, which have built them up, can also be used for their annihilation. When you think of all the wars that the human race has been involved in, and these wars we create bombs and we have militaries to kill people. This is not nature doing this. This is human beings doing this. This is human beings fighting other human beings, destroying civilization. That's what Freud's talking about. Human creations are easily destroyed, and science and technology, which have built them up, can also be used for their annihilation. Civilization has to somehow deal with us, with human beings. That's why we have the United Nations. That's why we create organizations to create some type of peace. We have to come up with organizations and policies to somehow contain human violence. It's because we are creating the violence. It's not nature. Nature does is an enemy too. Hurricanes and storms and coronaviruses. These are things civilization has to defend itself against, but it also has to defend itself against us, other human beings who create technology, bombs, nuclear weapons, to destroy civilization. So there's a constant battle going on. Civilization basically is surrounded by enemies. That's the problem of this book. The problem of this book, and I haven't given you the whole problem, but this is the beginning of the problem. For Freud, the whole key to this book, I mean, it's called The Future of an Illusion, but another title might be, How Can Civilization Be Saved? Because Freud believes, and we'll get into the details in a little while, that civilization is in big danger. And that unless something is done, we will destroy ourselves. Okay? And basically this book is going to offer a solution to a problem. And it's going to have two problem solution sets. It's going to be, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm basically giving you the big picture. It's going to have problem one, solution one, problem two, solution two. And I'll explain what those are, in a few minutes. Maybe not in this lecture, but maybe in the next lecture. Okay, so that's the problem. Now, civilization is surrounded by enemies. Civilization is surrounded by nature. He also later in the book calls it fate. When Freud talks about nature, he's talking about untamed nature. He calls it fate. He's not talking about the nature of the romantic poets, Wordsworth and Shelley and Coleridge. They went out to nature to commune with nature, because in nature they found solace, they found peace and harmony. Freud is not talking about that type of nature. For Freud, the emphasis is on the hostile character of nature. Nature can destroy us. And as I mentioned, with the coronavirus, viruses come from nature. Nature can destroy us. Okay? Hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, that's what he's talking about. Untamed nature is an enemy of civilization, and so are individuals. We can't do anything about that, except, we can't change nature. All we can do is fight it. But human beings, we are the problem. It's not nature at this point. Now, Freud asks the question. He says, one reason why human beings do not like civilization, he says, is because civilization imposes on us restrictions and regulations and laws, and we don't like that. And Freud says we get the impression that civilization, this is on page 7, we get the impression that civilization is something which was imposed on a resisting majority, the masses of people, by a minority which understood how to obtain possession of the means to power and coercion. So the situation is this, in civilization, he says, you get the impression that you have a few people, controlling the masses. And the reason they have to control the masses is because, as Freud, in this chapter, he says, the masses of people are lazy. They're not going to work unless they have to work. And they're ignorant. Their reason is very weak compared to their passions and their emotions. And also they have hostile impulses. So what Freud says, you get the impression that a minority of people have imposed order and imposed restrictions on the masses. Okay, so basically the history of humanity is a history of people controlling other peoples. Think of slavery. Slavery has been around for thousands of years. Now it's finally illegal, but it's still around. But for thousands of years, it was legal, totally. So the slaves, I don't think were happy being slaves. They were forced to be slaves by the people who took power. One gets the impression that civilization is something which was imposed on a resisting majority by a minority who understood how to obtain possession of the means to power and coercion. And then Freud says this, it is of course natural to assume that these difficulties are not inherent in the nature of civilization itself, but are determined by the imperfections of the cultural forms. This is the problem. Freud now is dealing with this. Who's to blame? Okay, fine. Individuals are at war with civilization. They don't like civilization because they feel it's a burden. Civilization imposes order on the it imposes restrictions on the individual. And so basically you have individuals in civilization who are not happy in civilization. Freud wants to know, what's the cause of this? He offers two solutions. He offers two. Who's to blame? Is civilization to blame, or is the individual to blame? If civilization is to blame, then this would be kind of an optimistic view. If civilization is to blame, you can do something about it. Just fix it. Fix civilization. And that's one view. I mean, if civilization is to blame, if all this unhappiness of individuals in civilization is because we've created civilizations that have defective institutions, well, we can do something about it. We can fix it. And then Freud says, if we fix it, we can actually bring about a golden age, a utopian society, a golden age. Now, Freud doesn't mention anybody by name, but he has in mind Karl Marx. He has Marxism in mind. This is an optimistic view. Karl Marx believed that the problem was civilization. The reason why people are not happy in civilization is because our social institutions are defective. And Marx said, let's fix them. Let's fix civilization. Let's fix the social institutions. And for Marx, basically he saw the problems as one of class conflict. You had in the modern world, you had the bourgeoisie on the one hand oppressing the proletariat. So Marx would say, the proletariat has to rise up and overthrow their oppressors, right? So for Marx's answer to the question who's to blame is civilization is to blame, and we can fix it. And since we can fix it, we can then create a society, a just society, and actually ultimately create a utopian society and attain a golden age. That's an optimistic view. So on the one hand, you have the Marxist view. Freud himself doesn't believe it will work. Freud takes the pessimistic view. Freud's view is that the problem, he's not saying that the civilization is not a problem, but the kernel is, the heart of the problem is not civilization. The heart of the problem is in the heart of human beings. Or not so much the heart, but the instincts. Freud believes that, and he'll get into, in chapter 2, he'll get into the details. Freud believes that the individuals are messed up. The individuals are inherently inherently defective. We have these hostile, in chapter 1 he talked about hostile impulses. Human beings, Freud says, are lazy, ignorant, and have aggressive, hostile impulses. These are not going to go away. So civilization has to deal with bad material. And Freud says, that's why ultimately we will never have a golden age, because civilization, because of the nature of human beings, is always going to have laws and restrictions, and it's always going to be a burden to human beings. The reason is because human nature is corrupt from a Freudian standpoint. For Marx, the problem is not human nature, it's civilization. Fix civilization and you fix the problem and you have the golden age. For Marx, the problem is human nature. We are ignorant, lazy, and we have hostile impulses. In chapter 2, he'll go into more specific. For Freud, the problem is the human being, and civilization is never going to get rid of human nature. So for Freud, we will never attain a golden age. Civilization will always be experienced for Freud as a burden. Now, in chapter 2, he's going to get into develop this conflict between civilization and the individual, and he's going to explain why civilization is in danger of being destroyed, and then he's going to offer a solution to it. But that's what I'll talk about that in the next couple lectures.